Singing. It's scary, am I right? Who here is afraid to sing? Come on, be honest with me. Who here in this room is terrified to sing? I see you. Are you afraid to sing in the car, even when you're alone? Do you turn off the radio as soon as someone walks into the room? Are you terrified to even attempt those high notes? Well, if so, clearly you're not alone. It's wild to me that something as natural as vocalizing, something that we are literally born doing, has somehow turned into something that only the talented are allowed to do. I guess if we're not perfect, we may not even try, right? And believe me, I totally get it. I used to be terrified to sing too for years, which is crazy because I am a singer. I was the girl who knew she was going somewhere with her voice until I felt like my voice failed me. And the thing is, it wasn't actually my voice that failed me. It was my brain and the fear that I wrapped around my creative outlet, which eventually turned it into a prison. When I graduated high school, I turned down a full-ride scholarship to the University of Utah. Why? Well, because I had my sights set on something more prestigious. The vocal performance program at Brigham Young University. I thought, this is it. This is my chance to make waves. And then I didn't get in. So I tried again and again. For 2 years I auditioned, but to no avail. And I didn't know what to do with myself. The competition was stiffer, the stakes were higher, and my voice just couldn't keep up. And so I slowly receded into silence. I stopped singing in front of my roommates. I was worried about disturbing my neighbors. And the only times that I did sing were when I was in service of others at church or at a funeral. And even then, I would leave as soon as I finished singing. Not because I was embarrassed necessarily, but because I genuinely couldn't handle the compliments I would receive afterward. I just couldn't believe them. My voice wasn't good anymore. And so ultimately, I gave up my dream of being a professional singer. I switched my major to family studies, mostly because it was the easiest degree I could finish in the fastest amount of time. I wasn't chasing a new dream. I just wanted to be done with school. But surprisingly, as I started taking those classes, I actually found myself interested. I was fascinated by human behavior and by relationships. I wanted to know what makes people, what breaks them, and what ultimately causes them to rebuild, with the hope that maybe I could rebuild myself too. But what I didn't know at the time was that the breakdown of my identity as the perfectionistic vocalist was actually the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I thought I was giving up, but it was the start of me discovering who I truly was. In my last year of college, I got a job at an eating disorder treatment center. At first, it was just a way to get through the end of school, but it soon became something more. I was just the tech, the one sitting in the back and making sure that the patients weren't goofing off. But I was learning so much at the same time. We attended so many group classes. We went to group therapy, fitness, nutrition classes. We meditated and learned how to ground ourselves. And my favorite class of all was, of course, music therapy. I was surrounded by people who had been broken by life. And I started to notice these patterns of how they carried their emotions in their body. I started to notice how they carried that shame would cause them to shrink inside themselves, how anxiety caused them to shake or catch their breath and how trauma quite literally caused their brain to disconnect from the rest of their body. But I also saw each of these individuals striving to grow and to change and to heal and to discover who they were again. And that gave me hope. I stayed at the treatment center for a couple of years after graduating. And while I absolutely loved that work, I was still missing something. I didn't feel whole. All I knew was that I had been chasing a dream for so long, and I'd been spending so much of my time trying to prove that I was good enough, or at least worthy enough to matter. And as I finally slowed down enough, I realized what I was missing. I was missing music. Now, I knew I missed the stage. I knew I missed the spotlight. But this was the first time that I realized that I missed singing for me. Not to receive applause, not to get attention, but because I genuinely wanted to sing to feel like myself again. And through this process, I discovered that wholeness does not come from external validation. It comes from self-acceptance, self-awareness, self-love, and from giving yourself permission to return to what lights you up. And so I gave myself that permission to do something absolutely crazy, and I opened my voice studio. I wasn't planning on starting a business. I didn't have a degree in music, let alone in business. I didn't have a 5-year plan, and I was shocked when I had to hire additional teachers to keep up with demand. All I knew at the beginning was that I just wanted to sing again, and I hoped that I could help others feel safe doing the same. When I first started teaching singing, I taught breath control, resonance, diction, standard fare for most voice teachers. But the longer I taught, the more I started to notice that these emotional patterns that I had seen at the treatment center, the anxiety, the fear, the deep disconnect from the body, was showing up in my studio too. Students would apologize before they ever even sang a note. And if they made a mistake, I saw them shrink within themselves. And I started to realize that voice problems are rarely just about the voice or technique. They have so much more to do with our emotion and our mental health lying beneath that. And so I changed the way that I taught. I started incorporating my degree and my experience at the treatment center. I started working with my students on breathing, vulnerability, trust. And that's when I really started to see changes happen. My student, Katie, came to me when she was in the middle of intensive treatment for anxiety and depression. She was raw, fragile, barely hanging on, but I saw a flicker of passion in her, and I knew that her voice and her healing were connected, if only given the space to grow. And so we worked on breath work, gentle singing, and on body awareness. Every time she hit a vocal block, I helped her see it not as a failure, but as a mirror to the emotional breakthroughs that she was making in therapy. And eventually, each of those breakthroughs started to show up in the voice studio as well. And after years of feeling small, stuck, and insignificant, she finally allowed herself to return to her passion, and she started auditioning for roles that she had never dared pursue before. Now, Sarah came to me just wanting to learn how to sing. But together, we did so much more. We faced head-on her stage fright, and we peeled back the emotional layers of each song. I helped her stretch her voice, not just upward in range, but inward in bravery. And through that vulnerability, her voice has become honest, true, and deeply moving. Now, Alexandria was one of the loudest personalities I've ever met. But as soon as she started singing, her voice barely existed. She'd been bullied, shamed, told she was too much. And so, yes, I worked with her on volume, but more importantly, I worked with her on permission. Permission to be loud, permission to be imperfect, and permission to be herself. And over the past 5 years, her voice has blossomed into one that has freedom and power behind it. Now, each of these students, along with countless others, didn't just learn how to sing. They learned how to be themselves. They learned how to trust themselves. And they learned how to be honest with themselves. Because at the end of the day, my work is not about music. It's about people and about helping them learn to be themselves and use their sound to say, I am safe, I'm here, and I am allowed to take up space. So, why does this work? Why does something as simple as vocalizing and singing, something that most of us have been taught to be ashamed of, create such powerful emotional change? The answer is not just emotional. It's scientific and neurological. Because while we think of singing as an art form, it turns out that it actually can also be used as a form of medicine. Something deeper is going on here. Something that connects our brain to the rest of our body. Now, when we sing, we stimulate the vagus nerve. This nerve is the main communication channel between your brain and the rest of your body. It is extremely important. It is responsible for regulating your heart rate, your breath, your digestion, and it also supports emotional regulation and your intuition. And the more this nerve is stimulated, the more your body feels like it is safe. The more you are able to elevate out of fight or flight and back into calm and safety. This is why I firmly believe that singing should not just be for the talented. It should be a part of mental health hygiene, the same as journaling, sleeping, meditating, exercise. Because when we use our voices and we stimulate that vagus nerve, we are using our sound to tell our bodies that we are safe, that we matter, and that we are allowed to take up space. I spent years thinking that I had to be perfect to be heard. And now I know that it's not about perfection. It's not about applause. It's not about accolades. I sing now because I know what it does for my mental health and for my body and my brain. And I've seen firsthand how it has changed my students' lives. And this isn't just true about me or my students. This is true about each and every person in this audience. So please, sing. Sing with your kids. Sing at the top of your lungs. Sing in the car on that road trip. Sing imperfect if you have to. Sing quiet if you have to. But just let yourself sing. Because this world does not need more perfect voices. It needs more authentic ones, starting with yours. Thank you.